We're going to dive right into it. We'll go into the Holy Bull here. This is the big one down at Gulfstream. This is a prep leading into the Florida Derby. The next logical step following this, if these horses were to come back, would be the Fountain of Youth. But first things first, a field of 9 ran a mile and a 16th here on Saturday. Post-time favorite at odds of 4-5 was Maximus Mischief. On paper, he was an omnifig. He was every one of his races, all 3 of them were faster than the fastest that anyone else had ever run even once. He, needless to say, was the horse to beat in here. Ultimately, that is not how things played out. He did not get the job done. Heck, he didn't even crack the exacta. Harvey Wallbanger from the back of the pack saves all the ground. Here's the stretch run of the Holy Bull.
Side second, Harvey Wallbanger got a ground-saving trip. He has the short stretch to work with, but he's under a full head of steam now. Still many chances with less than an eighth to go. Maximus Mischief, Epic Dreamer, Harvey Wallbanger continues to close. Here's Harvey Wallbanger in epic fast. It's Harvey Wallbanger. Harvey Wallbanger.
Harvey Wallbanger gets the job done at odds of 29-1 over Everfast, the second longest shot on the board. Miraculously, the second longest shot at 128-1. And then Maximus Mischief, your 4-5 favorite, finishes third behind those 2 big prices. Let's take a look at Harvey Wallbanger a little bit more. He is 2 of 5 lifetime, never been out of the exacta in 5 lifetime starts, a shade under $300,000 in career earnings. Owned by Lerner LLC, AWC Stables, Niehawk Stables, Ackman, and Braverman. Trained by Kenny McPeak, bred by Tony Holmes and Dr. and Mrs. Walter Zent in Kentucky, ridden to victory by Brian Hernandez Jr. The pedigree is at the bottom of the horse card. He is by Congrats out of a distorted humor mare named Adora Bell. I'm not going to really mince words here. It's hard for me to get excited about this race when you see the speed figures, when you see the race, the way it was run, when you see it visually. There's really nothing that suggests to me that this is going to be a key prep. But look, I've been wrong a lot, so who knows? Anything can happen. 85 buyer for Harvey Wallbanger in this race, a 106 pace-adjusted time form U.S. rating. The quarter, half, and three-quarter splits all color-coded red, meaning Harvey Wallbanger had all of it go his way. He also saved every inch of ground in this spot. I think it is a positive that he has rebounded from those 2 duds the way that he finished out last year as a 2-year-old. Having said that, he did break his maiden in his final start as a 2-year-old. But from a figure standpoint, he had regressed from his first 2 lifetime starts. The problem is, even if you say he has improved from a number standpoint, his second lifetime start, I believe he earned an 81 buyer. And here he earns an 85. Look, I'm not going to sit here and say that the horse didn't run. He ran the best of the 9 horses. He did have the best trip. He did have the best pace situation. It's just, again, very difficult for me to get super excited about a horse that saved every inch of ground, came from dead last on a day where it seemed like the pace melted down. But at the same time, I can't sit here with a straight face and say the pace melted down, because the horses that were 1, 2, 3 at the half-mile call finished 4, 3, and 2. So that just makes me even more believe that this might not be a good race. I don't know how much talent is actually in here. And coming into this race, I really thought Maximus Mischief, I was a little unsure about the distance. I thought it was going to be fine for him. I thought even a mile and an eighth. He had won that race, the Remsen, as a 2-year-old at a mile and an eighth. Didn't think that'd be an issue for him. Thought he was arguably the most talented, if not him, Mijos. And Mijos, I voiced that I didn't know how far he wanted to go. And I didn't like Harvey Wallbanger in here. I said if the pace completely melted down, maybe he could come with a run. It's exactly what happened. But I don't know that you can classify it as a meltdown, because those pace horses, they were all right there at the end. Which, again, just makes me think that this field might not be that good. Everfast was 128-1. On paper, there's a reason he was 128-1. The fact that he was beaten by a length in here and finished second, there's a reason the exacta came back $1,100. Because this is just not a likely situation that played out. And, it'll be interesting to see going forward. Kenny McPeak talking about Harvey Wallbanger, excuse me. I won't rule out the Fountain of Youth, although I'm really thinking of waiting for the Florida Derby. Since he fired such a big shot off the long rest, the Florida Derby is our main goal here this winter, and I think it should be ideal for him. To be honest, I would do the exact same thing. You know what? If he comes here, he gets some Derby points, he's probably going to need to do that again in the Florida Derby, but again, at that point, you're dealing with the 100-point preps. Realistically, a 4th-place finish in a race like that, for him, that'd probably be enough to get him into the field. I think that'd put him right around 30 points when it's all said and done. To me, look, if you want to use this as the barometer of what's going on down there in South Florida, I guess he's at the top of the list. And if you're already at the top of the list now, what's the point in running in that race here next month? Wait for that Florida Derby. fire your shot. Hopefully it's enough to get you into the Kentucky Derby. If it's not, you got a horse that you can look at for the Preakness. And I know this sounds like I'm just bashing on the horse in general. I mean, look, he did his job. I feel like everyone else left a little bit to be desired. Everfast, I can't all of a sudden sit here and think that he's a major player. An 83 buyer here, it's just too slow. And again, at 128 to 1, perhaps he can improve. I'm not suggesting that's not going to happen, but it's just very difficult for me to get excited here. Maximus Mischief, the connections, they don't seem to be too phased by this. Apparently, Maximus Mischief was a little bit of a handful pre-race over in the paddock. Maybe that was part of his undoing. Butch Reed was quoted afterwards saying that the March 2nd Fountain of Youth remains in play for this horse. I would certainly run him in that race because, to me, we need to find out if this is, was he a precocious 2-year-old and now everyone else has caught up to him? Has he regressed? I mean, from a number standpoint, he regressed significantly. This is far and away the slowest race of his career. The only thing I'll say about Maximus Mischief, and you could say that about a few different horses in here running at Gulfstream for the first time, Gulfstream is a notoriously quirky racetrack. Some horses take to it, some horses don't. Maybe that's the case, maybe not. It just visually was not an impressive effort from Maximus Mischief. As far as Epic Dreamer is concerned, he showed that speed that we had seen when he broke his maiden out at Belmont Park. He didn't have the cleanest of trips in that race at Remington in the Springboard Mile. Frankly, I didn't like that field. I didn't like the effort from him. But he went out there, set the pace, 23, 46 and 3, 10 and 4 for 3/4. He hung around. He got a little bit tired at the end, but all things considered, this was not a terrible effort from him at 12 to 1 beneath the Rad Ortiz. You know what? I don't love this horse by any stretch as far as a Derby contender is concerned, but I think there are races for him that he can fit decently in. At the end of the day, though, we're still talking about an 81 buyer. He needs to improve. Mijos, I was very disappointed in his effort, but to be honest with you, again, considering I didn't love the idea of him at 2 turns, that part, okay, I'm going to give him the mulligan there. The part that I can't give him the mulligan for, and I know I called him a grinder and I said visually he is not the sexiest thing you've ever seen. He's got to do a little bit better than Johnny V having to get into him as they turn onto the backside for the first time just to maintain sort of, shouting distance to the main players in there. And I don't hold the ride against Velasquez. He's got to keep, you can't let the main contenders, who you think the main contenders are, streak 3-4 lengths ahead of you and then try to go and run them down. Like, more likely than not, that's not going to work. The concern, and again, kind of a tip-off for me that perhaps this was not a great race, when Mijos is backing up on the far turn, and then he comes on again on the straight, and he's only defeated in the grand scheme of things by less than 4 lengths, that to me is not a great sign. We'll find out. I still maintain I'd like to see him going 1 turn going forward. I'm sure the connections, and rightfully so, take one more chance, whether it's the Fountain of Youth or the Florida Derby. I'm already thinking Pat Day Mile. I'm thinking H. Allen Jerkins up at Saratoga. I'm thinking a number of those races. 1 turn. I think Mijos is still going to be okay, but this was certainly a disappointing effort. Federal Case, a horse that I thought was intriguing for Pletcher, a nice 3-year-old. Guess what? When the real running started, he dropped anchor and went backwards. Come on, Jerry. He was forward. He was wide. Things didn't really work great for him. I maintain, from a pedigree standpoint, get him on the grass, get him on synthetic. He's an Ontario bred. And Gladiator King, again, I don't know what he was doing in the race. He was 200 to 1 in here. So this probably sounds like a very, very harsh criticism of this race. It kind of is. I don't think this race is very good. As I've said, I'm wrong a hell of a lot. Maybe I'm going to end up being wrong about this race. We'll find out in time when they do come back. It sounds like the winner, Harvey Wallbanger, is going to be probably taking a little bit of a back seat now. He'll wait for the Florida Derby. At least that's the tentative plan. A horse like Maximus Mischief, you may see him next month in the Fountain of Youth trying to rebound, and we'll find out where everyone else chooses to come back in their next spots. The pace was hot in here. The final time, not that fast. The final speed figure, not that great. Harvey Wallbanger, though, is now a graded stakes winner. He gets the job done in the Holy Bull with an 85 buyer.